They say the devil is in the details, which is an ominous phrase, but also one that holds truth. I have to imagine this phrase, or some variation of it, rang through the heads of Sucker Punch's team during the development of Ghost of Tsushima. The product that Sucker Punch delivered is by no means perfect, but does so much right that its faults are forgivable. The talented team based out of Bellevue, Washington should be extremely proud of their work. They managed to create a world that made me forget I was playing a video game. I'm not saying the game felt like real life, because as much as I would love to own a katana, I don't, and I probably never will, but it was effortless to experience. Don't get me wrong, I died plenty of times in my playthrough, but never once did the game's world, systems, or features prevent me from enjoying Sucker Punch's creation. The reason this game is such a joy to play, and why it will stand the test of time, is because Sucker Punch had a vision, and then chose to focus on details that would ensure their vision would manifest. Let me step back a little bit. What happens a lot with game development is that map size or graphical fidelity takes precedence, and in the end, the developers fail to execute on a crucial aspect. They didn't make their game fun. They ship a product that, while impressive on the outset, is underwhelming once you get settled in. In my very first video, I alluded to the fact that this was an issue with the current iteration of Assassin's Creed games. The maps in these games are beautiful, sure, but they just don't have that spark that truly special games have. You know, those games that get you to play through more than once, the ones where you methodically make your way through its story and world so as not to rush things and ruin your first time with it. If developers are going to ask players to spend exorbitant amounts of time playing their game, they need to remember the most fundamental aspect of video games. They need to be fun. Games don't need to be lighthearted romps with no narrative conflict, but they should at the very least be enjoyable to interact with. Alright, so how does that relate to Ghost of Tsushima? Well, Sucker Punch decided to create a world that was filled to the brim with things to do. There were multiple sets of collectibles, points of interest to interact with, side quests ranging from one-offs to mini self-contained sagas, and much more. They put the time into adding those things because they felt it would be worthwhile for the player to complete these activities. And you know what? Throughout my entire time with the game, never once did any of it feel like a chore. I could not wait to continue exploring the lush island of Tsushima. Kind of reminds me of another game that I referenced in my first video. While downright stunning, this game, when looked under a microscope, is not quite on the level of a Red Dead Redemption 2 or Last of Us Part 2. Look at an object up close in the game, and you'll probably notice that it is smoothed over. This goes for a lot of the copy and paste objects in the world. That might sound like lazy game making, but it's not. If Sucker Punch spent the time to make the ropes, dirt, moss, or anything else look hyper-realistic, then I guarantee you other areas of this game would have suffered. I'm guessing some strategic cost-benefit analysis was done when creating Tsushima, and I'm completely satisfied with what they decided was unnecessary. Instead of focusing on details that would probably only get a few seconds of admiration from a small portion of fans, they zoomed out to look at the big picture. Because they chose to do this, what we got was one of the most beautiful interactive worlds ever. What I am trying to say is that Sucker Punch focused on the details that mattered. As I traveled from one corner of the island to the next, I couldn't help but feel a little awestruck at how much confidence the game exuded. Long before this game was released, Sucker Punch announced there would be no mini-map in the game. I have to admit, while I was intrigued by this announcement, I was skeptical. I didn't know if Sucker Punch could actually pull that off. Would their game world be designed well enough to where you wouldn't need a compass and an always present picture of the map to let you know you were going in the right direction? Well, sitting here, after my time with the game, I can tell you that the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Instead of training your eye on the top left or right corner of your screen as you travel to a marked location, Tsushima does away with that tired trope and pulls your gaze to its entire vibrant canvas. Not only is the island of Tsushima a treat to look at on a grand scale, but the intelligence in its design is at once both subtle and always apparent. Many times as I was riding towards the pin I dropped on the in-menu map, I would encounter environmental markers that guided me towards my desired location. While this was happening, there wasn't that obnoxious inner dialogue inside my head saying, "Where do I go? Was it this way or that way?" I knew the general direction I needed to go. On my way, a smokestack would catch my eye, I would move closer to it, and then I would see a rock that looked worth investigating, and so on. Before I knew it, I had arrived at the exact spot I was trying to get to. It was all effortless. I can't imagine the amount of time it took Sucker Punch to make such a tightly constructed package like this, but I have no doubt that when they were finished, they knew they had a winner on their hands. Another amazing thing about this map design is that as you travel to a particular location, you are almost guaranteed to come across one of those activities I previously mentioned. Sometimes it would take me over an hour just to get to the original location I set out for. Not because I got lost, but because the thrill of finding a hidden shrine or a breathtaking viewpoint was so tantalizing, I felt it was well worth it to deviate from my initial path and go exploring. In my book, that is the mark of a game with true passion driving the hands that crafted it. So navigation is made simpler because the map is designed to both lead you in the right direction and encourages exploration. But how else does the game make life easier for the player? Here are some other examples. After spending 5 or more minutes traversing up a mountain to honor a shrine, with the click of a button you can immediately transport yourself back to the start, so you don't have to spend another 5 minutes to get back down. I mean, what would be the fun in that? When you gather resources, whether on foot or horseback, you don't need to actually go through a useless animation to actually grab said resource. Again, with the click of a button you grab it and you're on your way. This is such a relief because in order to upgrade your gear and unlock new dyes for your armor and weapons, you will constantly be gathering resources, so an animation that lasted for even a second would be a nuisance after a few hours of playtime. Whenever you drop a pin on the map and exit back to the game, the guiding wind feature auto-activates to give you the initial direction that you should head in. If you hover over a friendly camp, a window will appear that tells you how many upgrades you have available, so there's no need to go through the various menu screens to check yourself. The fast travel, even at great distances, is much faster than I anticipated, which is great if I'm just going somewhere to run a quick errand. There are many other examples, but the last one I will mention is the one I appreciate the most, which is the menus and the UI. There might not be a more aggravating issue in a game for me than a clunky, overbloated menu system that doesn't load quickly and is a pain in the ass to use, especially for open world games where inventory management and character customization is a large part of the experience. If in order to get the most out of a game I need to be in the menu for a substantial minority of my time, the menu should be easy to navigate and respond quickly. This might sound like a no-brainer, but I can't tell you how often this is ignored by game devs. Somehow, after all these years, this is still an issue for many of the titles that are released. It honestly baffles me. Anyway, now that my mini rant is over, I can satisfyingly say that Ghost of Tsushima's menus are pristine. They load quickly, and with just a glance you're able to see pertinent info regarding quests, gear stats, and skins, and so much more. All those things I mentioned might seem like they wouldn't add a great deal to the overall experience, but I promise you, without them the game would have felt disjointed. Wouldn't it have been a shame if Sucker Punch gave us this great world to explore, only to have it be mired by a laundry list of issues that make the actual act of exploring feel like a chore? Instead of that, what we got was a game that gets out of our way. We can just sit back and enjoy our time with it without having to be bogged down with the usual nuisances that disrupt other games. In my original video, I was somewhat skeptical of Sucker Punch for taking as long as they did for making this game. In retrospect, Walter would have had a field day with me.
Donnie, you're out of your element.
The polish this game shipped with comes from the time they were given to finish it. I have a hunch, considering the lack of them in other games, that the responsive menus, quick fast travel, and other features were optimized in the extra months Sucker Punch had to wait to release this game. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I imagine if you talk to devs from other projects off the record, they would tell you all about the features and content that had to be left out due to time and resource constraints. Tsushima plays like a game that had very little left on the cutting room floor at the end of the day. Tsushima doesn't do anything that is particularly groundbreaking, and again, it isn't perfect, but it knows what it does well and consistently plays to those strengths. Other games might have better stories, better combat, better stealth, but even when compared to some of the all-time great open-world games, Ghost of Tsushima definitely warrants a comparison for its achievement in intelligent map design and exploration. It focuses on the detail that matter for what it's trying to be, and because of that, Sucker Punch allowed their work to shine. Hey you jabronis, hope you liked it. This one took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to get out. I switched to a new editing program, Final Cut. It's a lot to take in, but I think it'll help me and my videos out in the future, so yeah, bear with me through the growing pains, I suppose. Also, if you're interested at all in Japanese history or Mongol history, and you don't know about Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, his podcast series, I would highly recommend checking that out. He's got a whole series on the Mongols and Japan as well, and a whole bunch of other topics, so if that's something that interests you, definitely check that out. And other than that, you know what to do. Hit the like button if you liked it, comment if you disagreed, you agreed, anything. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here and you want to see more. And last thing is, would someone please go get Fenton?